All right. Good afternoon, Chair. Everybody is present and accounted for. Lobby is open and the recording has begun.
Great. Thank you, Dustin. Good afternoon, everybody. This is the Wednesday, July 14th, 2021 Executive Management Team meeting of the Liquor and Cannabis Board. I'm David Postman. I'm joined by board members Ollie Garrett and Russ Hauge. Our first order of business is approval of some past minutes of Executive Management Team meetings. First is approval of the May 12th, 2021 meeting minutes. Is there a motion for approval?
I move approval of the May 12th EMT meeting minutes.
Thank you.
And I will second.
And then that is approved. Thank you. And then the next set is would be a motion for approval of the June 9th, 2021 EMT meeting minutes.
Chair, sorry to interrupt real quick. We're going to, I have a little bit more polishing to do on those. We're going to hold off on those for just a minute.
Sorry, I'm
Thank
always failed to read to the bottom of the one sentence. Thanks, Dustin. We're going to postpone the June 9th ones. They were not quite ready to go. Moving into our staff presentations, we're going to start today with a licensing update from Becky Smith, the Licensing and Regulations Director. Go ahead.
So good afternoon. I actually have some exciting information to share, and although my presentations are always exciting, that I do want to begin with the social equity piece, because my staff and I have been working on drafting a proposal for communications for updating our website content to provide potential social equity applicants general licensing requirements and social equity information. This is information and an ask that we've received and we've heard from the Social Equity Task Force, that we've had folks reach out to us regarding the application process. Are there things that they could be working on and doing as part of preparing for the application process to open up? And so we put together some information. I think it's great information. We've done some research around viable locations, or at least what the jurisdictions look like, that we'll be looking at continuing developing a map that shows areas where maybe local zoning doesn't permit for cannabis businesses to be operating, or maybe there's an ordinance that doesn't allow for them to be in a certain location. We've also included on our website like 5 things, a licensing, that somebody who is deciding on whether they want to apply for a social equity application, once that opens up, that window opens, what they can do to prepare. It has lots of good information, that we've shared it with Rick and Brian, of course. This morning we had an opportunity to share it with Ollie to receive some feedback. And then we're excited to get it on our website. That again it really has some really good information for applicants that have some interest in applying for a license. Rick or Brian or Ollie, do you guys have anything you want to add?
This is Ollie, and I don't want to go into too much of it. I'm going to request 20 minutes on the agenda for the next full social equity meeting, task force meeting. I think it's the end of July. So we can do a demo and show it at that meeting. But I was very impressed and very pleased. I think it's thorough. It covers a lot of everything that a person would need that's thinking about getting into the industry, and everything, all of the websites that they would need to go on, everything they're needing is going to be very accessible and easy to navigate. So it was great, and I can't wait for us to present it at the next full task force, social equity task force meeting.
Yeah, I echo that. They did a great job on that and bringing it forward. And I've got a little time when I do my update that I'll just kind of talk about how we plan to implement it.
And then just a couple of other follow-ups with that piece of work is that we're also meeting with other states. So On July 6th, we met with Illinois Cannabis Control Office. We want to learn more about their social equity program, including their licensing process, of course, their scoring criteria, some of the outreach that they have done as part of their programming as well. And going to also be meeting with the state of California and some of their jurisdictions that also have social equity programs that up and running or in the beginning stages. So again, very exciting process that's happening and moving forward.
Becky, in reaching out to others, have you run across any state that has a positive type, any social equity program that some pieces of it have worked? Because it doesn't sound like it. It sounds like everything is, even though they're just getting going in the industry, they are slow on getting started with their programs.
Yeah, it sounds like, that certainly I'm just in the beginning stages of doing some of those reach outs. I know for Illinois that the manager who's over that program has done a fantastic job, but still there hasn't been any licenses issued. But their questions are good. I mean, it certainly gives us the chance an opportunity to see what the questions are, and it's nice to be, well, it's not nice to be, but it's, we were the first out back in 2013. To be able to learn from others about what they would do differently, I think will be helpful. And, that the state of Illinois shared that information with us, that, their application tends to be really quite long, but we haven't seen, at least I haven't heard of yet, social equity process that has gone really swell, that really smoothly. So hopefully we'll be able to learn from some of the other states and be able to put together a process that will work for Washington. So I'm going to move on to customer service, and that sort of what folks can expect is that our special occasion license application process, that our licensing or requests have gone up. That in the month of April and May we saw about 90. We've seen about 100 for the month of June, 120 already in the month of July. What that tells us is that people are planning and putting events together with those special occasion licenses, and some of them, a lot of outdoor events is what we're seeing, or family type events as well. That we're also doing a lot of presentations again. That for a while there we had a lot of virtual events, and now we're being asked to come and do events in person, and STEM's still virtual. On July 15th, so tomorrow, we're going to be doing a presentation, customer service, of course, online forum with the Washington Wine Association licensees to discuss the pros and cons of the licensing process and to address any industry questions that it might have. And then we're also going to be doing another presentation with enforcement. And I think that what I've seen here over the last few months is that we're doing a lot more presentations with enforcement, hand in hand with that collaboration. That Kim Sowers and there's a sergeant out of Federal Way Enforcement Office that will be doing a presentation to the 7-Eleven franchise owners, that they'll be able to provide information regarding the responsible vendor program and application process, how to do ID checking, for instance, the different methods. But again, good collaboration going on with enforcement. And then for liquor licenses, I do want to share that, again, we're seeing an uptick, that we're almost back to pre-pandemic, that we're seeing about 340 applications coming in at a time. And really, last month we issued around 200 new licenses. And new licenses does not mean a new business. New licenses means a new owner. So just want to make sure that we're not seeing a lot of new businesses popping up, but certainly new ownership out there and a steady increase in the number of applications coming in. Again, back to that collaboration with enforcement, that our non-retail They do a meeting every other Friday with our MIW enforcement and education team. They meet with our licensing team to discuss any type of licensing challenges they may have regarding non-retail. They have this great partnership that they've really built an opportunity to have some teaming and some discussions going on. If there's any concerns or questions from either licensing or enforcement, that's a time that they have those discussions. We're also seeing the same with our cannabis folks as well. So quarterly, the cannabis licensing and the enforcement management team gets together. They take the opportunity for cross-division collaboration and debrief. If there's discussions they need to have, if there's questions regarding issues that have come up, that perhaps questions that they have in a license that has been issued, that's the time that they have those type of discussions. They also take the opportunity to have some experts come in and do some training for both licensing and enforcement. And in August, they're going to have Nicola Reed come in and talk to them, to both sides about receiverships. Again, sometimes it's just updating education, estate suspensions process, expired licenses. If there's a way that we can improve the process, what we've seen is that these groups are ones that get together and they build an opportunity to look at some type of policies or maybe procedure changes that need to happen. With that, I just want to do one reminder, and then I'm going to see if there's any questions, is that we have a customer service results is tomorrow. Really excited to do the presentation. Folks have worked really hard in customer service on showing all of their work and some of the changes that they've made along the way, and particularly paying attention to COVID and what some differences in our practice that we've seen this past year. And then, of course, we're continuing to work on our inclusion statement in licensing that I mentioned it a couple of months ago, or at least a month ago for sure, that the supervisors and managers are in our final stages of developing for our division the definition of inclusion. We started the process because of an employee survey that we received, and we identified this was an area of improvement that we needed to be challenged to make some changes. And so we have a draft document that we've provided to the supervisors that they've already provided information back to us. But again, we are taking the opportunity to work with our staff. We're hoping to see some changes within our organization, within our division, but also outside with our customers as well. So, this will be a changing document that continues to change over time as we make changes in our process and in our practice. So with that, I want to see if anybody had questions.
Questions from the board?
Becky, what is the time frame and what the policy was during COVID of being able to get alcohol with delivery, with to-go orders? What the process that we allowed, was there a time frame or something on that?
So you mean the allowances, how long we were going to continue to allow for that to happen?
Yes.
Yeah, I believe for third party, or I say third party for delivery, that that is something that we have a bill that was put forward to allow that to continue.
Okay,
Am I
and
correct?
on the being able to get alcohol drinks with to-go orders, the
Yes.
restaurants. That's the
Yes.
same thing. Okay.
It is same thing. And
Okay.
what you'll see, what we have on our website, and maybe Brian could speak to it, is that that Brian did a great job of providing what is going to continue to be allowed and what's going to end on June 30th or June 30th.
Okay. Okay.
Most of them
Then I'll
end.
wait.
Most of them end on July 31st, but there are several, as Becky said, that we ran legislation to extend, and those will be in place, including cocktails to go until 2023, or if the legislature extends.
Great, thank you,
Okay,
Brian.
thank you.
Director Garza has his hand up there. You want to add something?
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that, but I'll cover the the bill was 1480, Ollie, and I was going to cover a little bit about the study that we have to do in the next year, but everything that Becky and Brian said is true. Many of those allowances with respect to curbside service, takeout and delivery allowances were codified for a period of time, a couple more years that they'll stay in place before they go away. And then when I speak, I'll talk a little bit about the study we have to do. Sorry about that.
That's right. Great. Member Hauge, did you have a question or comment on this part? I saw you pop up at one
This
point.
is very helpful. I'm looking forward to seeing the outcome after the next diversity task force. Is really important progress.
I have one question for you. When you were talking about the uptick in alcohol licenses, and I understand transfers, maybe not new businesses, but where do we stand on sort of total number of licensed businesses pre-pandemic to today? Did we see, an impact from restaurants and or bars going out of business?
So we haven't.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we haven't been able to capture that yet, and I'll tell you why. Is because we've, that our usual practice will be if somebody doesn't pay their fee to renew, then we'd go out and enforcement would go out and check, and we'd close that business. But because of the pandemic, that we've extended those allowances, so people haven't, that we haven't seen businesses that are truly up and running completely yet. So, that if they haven't paid the renewal, that for they can't of course receive liquor into their restaurant, but that doesn't mean that they're out of business yet. So we're gonna, we'll be able to take a look at that over time, but we don't have those numbers quite yet to know who all has gone out of business.
Okay, great, thank you.
But great question.
Okay, thank you very much for that report. Appreciate that. And our next report comes from Communications Director Brian Smith on communications and media.
Thanks, Chair Postman and members of the board. Just real quick, run you through a few things. I've got some good news is that I've made an offer and had a person accept the job of the Communications 3 in training position. I don't want to say her name, I think, publicly until we get all the paperwork done and stuff, but she really was an outstanding candidate. I think summa cum laude in journalism from a school in New York, Ithaca College, and has been working out at Evergreen for the last 3 or 4 years, working as kind of a liaison between students and faculty and a number of issues. She's going to be really strong in the multimedia stuff that I think we lack in the communications shop. She's really strong in the film editing and the kind of stuff. If you remember, I talked to the board about our development of an ongoing video series and things like that. And we've got 3/4 of that done, but the fourth that she can bring in is what we hope to be able to make it look professional. So we've kind of held that a little bit on the back burner for the last month until we brought on someone and actually recruited for that type of skill set, in addition to good writing and stuff. So she's going to be a great addition to the group, and I hope to be able to introduce you guys before too long in person. But until then, I'm happy, she's happy, and it'll be a big help.
That's great.
Yeah. Doing some communication planning for some upcoming stuff. As you know, as we prepare early drafts of legislation, we run that by with stakeholders and things. And I'd been asked to be able to help out some of the coordination of what that communication might look like with stakeholders over some of these issues. One of them involves cooperating with the Department of Agriculture, including their communications director over there, and internally sort of the return to the office kind of communications. I don't know what else to call it. I mean, we're not returning to the office anytime real soon as an entity. Want to make that clear, but the staff have lots of questions. The public will have questions about how they can interact with us and stuff. Tony and Jim Morgan are the leads on that stuff, but working with them to make sure we're addressing those kind of issues early and often, really. And then we just addressed the end of the allowances stuff, and as Becky said, did some work on the website and an announcement out to folks, and that's going to continue to be ongoing, probably again as we get close to the end of the month. We sent out, you probably saw a message from Rick to all staff about the office, from the survey from the Office of Equity, which is headed up by Dr. Johnson, Dr. J. And in addition to that, there's also an external piece, which is another survey and a message that goes out to our stakeholders, all of our sort of industries that we regulate, with a different survey. They would put in, when respondents fill that out, they add which agency they are referring to or who they interact with. And then the Office of Equity, they're going to get thousands of these, I suppose, across all state government, will sort of put together kind of a plan for each of the agencies, or at least something to be able to come back and discuss. So we'll get some interesting input. I think that's some valuable input. And there will be a period later for engaging stakeholders directly on DEI issues. And so maybe Rick will have something to say about that, but we can talk about that at a later point. But we're going to probably issue the external one as early as this afternoon. So we have a message good to go with the survey all prepped up. Just the main thing, the Social Equity and Cannabis website. As you heard Becky say, licensing did all the work on that, and they made it, it's going to be great. On our homepage, the prime real estate are those things that you see when you first bring it up, and it'll start off with the Ready Washington logo. We call that the dynamic display. Then it turns after 3 seconds, and it goes, and there's 5 items up there, I think, that people ask about the most. That's what we put there. And the Cannabis 2021 is a section of our website that used to be white hot for years. I mean, it was just all of our traffic was going to that site. But as things have continued to mature and we take on other issues, it's got a lot of static information, I think, on that, the type of stuff, you know, how the licensing process works, how many we got, that kind of stuff, what you can do as a licensee. I think we're going to build on what Becky has is for the social equity and cannabis, and have that other stuff be able to augment it. So it'll give a kind of a fresh look to something that we've had for a while, but lead kind of with their maybe a new icon and new stuff going forward. So that's the plan. We're meeting with their staff on Friday. And based on all the work they've already done on it, the heavy lifting will be able to already be done, and we can make this happen fairly fast. And then ongoing, you know, is the media continued stuff. There is no single major issue that I'm dealing with at the moment. A lot of random stuff that we always get. We'll get 2 or 3 a day at least coming in with any type of question. And I'm always working on presentations and working with Rick and Tony and stuff on, you know, messaging and that types of thing. But that's about it. I mean, is there any questions?
One quick one on the social equity questionnaire. Will the agencies, will we be able to see sort of the raw data coming back, or does that go to Dr. Johnson and then we see it after it's been synthesized?
Good question. It goes to Dr. Johnson and we see it after it's been synthesized.
Okay.
So no one will be able to be identified by their particular response.
Yeah, okay, interesting. Thanks. Any other questions for Brian? Being none. Thank you. Appreciate that. And we'll go to the director, Rick Garza, for your comments.
Good afternoon, and thanks, Brian, for covering the survey that we're going to be sending to stakeholders, licensees from the Office of Equity. And just as Brian said, that it'll link to the Office of Equity, and then folks will take the survey, and then it goes back to them, and then comes back to us, because we're going to need that information, I suspect, when we do the listening sessions that will come several months later. All of this information for this Office of Equity is to create a kind of a 5-year strategic plan on DEI initiatives within state government. So I don't know that I would cover more. I thought Brian did a nice job on that one. But just so you know, obviously our employees took the survey. I just approved the language, Brian, this morning, so we can send that out, like you said, to our stakeholders. And then we'll provide more information as we get it back for ourselves from the Office of Equity. I didn't talk about it at the time because I knew I'd get a chance today, but like Ollie and Brian, I was really impressed with the work that Becky and her team did with respect to the social equity, to use our website as that place you can go to get information if you have an interest in being a social equity applicant. And I think everything I saw, like you, Becky, I'm excited to have the task force see the information, and Ollie also, I know, is looking forward to providing that, because I think it's really, really good work. And then you asked the obvious question, Ollie, with respect to social equity. What are we learning from the other states and jurisdictions that have these programs in place? And I think in just discussions with Becky recently, I thought we would see that Illinois was a little further along than they are. I think their process. So it feels like what we do is we go to other states and other local jurisdictions and grab the pieces that work for us. For example, Nicole Elliott was just last year, Governor Newsom appointed her director of the California Department of Cannabis Control. That's the state authority for cannabis. And Nicole used to work in San Francisco. She was the cannabis czar in San Francisco when the governor was in San Francisco, as you all know. And Nicole was very helpful a month ago on a camera call with us, that there are local jurisdictions, San Francisco, Oakland, and LA, that have put programs together. I got a sense from her that San Francisco and Oakland is having some success, not just creating it, but implementing it, which is the tough part. Because Ollie, you're right. Every time we go to another state or a location, there's pinpoints. I mean, there's issues like with respect to legal challenges and the rest of it. So I think that's a really good point, Ollie, that you make, is that we have to kind of learn from the other states and locals and take the pieces that work for us. But it's not like somebody just handed us the playbook and says, this is how it works. And so I'm glad you raised that, Ollie, because that's true. Secondly, Brian talked a little bit about the reentry planning that's been going on. And so what we did was we asked the division directors to reach out to their employees. And we did this through a survey months and months ago to figure out what their return to work looks like. What's their vision? Is it 1 day a week? Is it every day? Is it a hybrid? I suspect, as we've said, it's going to be a hybrid where most people are probably going to keep the majority of their time at home, maybe a day or two in the office. We'll see if that's what we see. We asked folks to bring back the divisions, to bring that back to management team by next week. So we'll have an idea to begin to think about what that looks like when we return. And so we've got time, and I think Brian and others, and David, you've said it before, is we want to be, since we've been able to work from home and have not seen gaps in service, we want to be, we want to recognize that there are folks out there and families that are still having issues with childcare and the rest of it. So we'll see what comes back, but just wanted to let you know that work continues. You had asked, or I think Ollie had asked about 1480, which is the law that was passed to create the allowances in statute for a number of years. And so just so you're aware, staff is beginning where we were given I believe it was 150,000 in a fiscal note on the bill to contract for an independent study of the impacts of the allowances. And there's some specific criteria that we have to follow, but we'll be doing an RFP to find someone to do that work. And I just wanted to let you know that staff has begun the work of scoping out the RFP. Just so you know the timing, the study has to be started by January 1st. And then we have to provide recommendations back to the governor and the legislature by December 1st of 2022. So we're, about a year and a half out, but we're starting now so that we could begin earlier the study if we find the right contractor for that. And so just wanted to let you know as part of that bill. And Ollie, we can have staff provide you. We did 1-pagers on all our legislation, and it will provide specifically what the allowances are if you need to see that. So we can get that to you if you just, I'll make note of it. Number 3, the Traffic Safety Commission has asked me to present tomorrow on the creation of CANRA, the Cannabis Regulators Association. One of their staff had come to a meeting that we had several weeks ago. Sarah invited all of our state agencies that have some either responsibility in regulating cannabis or have a nexus there. And obviously the Traffic Safety Commission does. And then one of their staff persons was at our CANRA mid-year meeting several weeks ago. And so they asked if we would come and provide, it's a short 10 or 15 minute presentation of the work that we're doing, the special committees that have been formed. That I know the Traffic Safety Commission is interested in the traffic impairment committee that was created. So just wanted to let you know that work continues. Also, Representatives Klova and Wicks, who are the chair and vice chair of the House and Gaming Committee in the House, have asked staff to provide them with a presentation, an overview of the cannabis regulatory system, and also in light of the discussions that's been happening around Delta 810 and the cannabinoids, just a refresher understanding of what our authority is, both regulatory and legal, around this issue. So we'll be doing that overview, I believe, next Wednesday. Justin is helping put that together while Chris is away, but just wanted you to know that that's occurring. Also got a call from Senator Murray's office yesterday, their staff letting us know that the discussion draft, the Federal Cannabis Legalization Act, it's actually called the Cannabis Administration and Opportunity Act, sponsored by Booker, Wyden, and Schumer. A discussion draft has been provided, and I think I heard from staff this morning that we have until September 1st. But given that, and so Senator Murray's interest as the ranking Democrat on the Health Committee, Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions, is interested in the public health pieces of that bill, and specifically FDA. And so I've alerted staff to that, and I've got Justin as a lead, along with Kathy, along with Bruce Turcott, our assistant AG, to look at that document. It's 163 pages, so it's not anything small. But just so you know, we'll be providing some feedback. We'll be looking for anything conflicting with respect to that bill with our program. So just wanted you to be aware that that's happening. And we'll obviously provide you with an update of what we see or any concerns before we provide that response, so the board has an opportunity to see and hear what we saw. And we can provide that. I just got it this morning. We can provide that to the board if you don't have, if you've not seen that yet. And then CANRA again has a meeting with the FDA next week. Many of the big federal agencies have asked for time with us in the last 6 months to share how we put our systems together. And so we're looking forward to that discussion with them. And I think I covered everything, board members and staff, that I had today, but I'll open it up for any questions you might have.
Okay, it looks like we have a question from Member Garrett.
Thank you. I feel really good. I actually wrote my questions down and raised my hand instead of interrupting. And I'm not forgetting what I was going to say. Rick, 2 questions for you on the work from home. Now that we are allowing that and going to have it to where they have a choice in hybrid and thing, are we making sure that is in all of our postings for positions at the LCB?
Yeah, that's a really great point. And I don't know. So I'll ask Anita in HR about that, but it's a really obvious question, isn't it? That I think most people know that people are working remotely, but to your point.
Well, no, if you got a position posted, just like what we went through with the DEI, and it's saying Thurston County, they wouldn't automatically assume.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Might open up to where we're able to now get a more broader candidates to work for the agency that's not in Olympia.
For sure.
Yeah, it's a really good point. Ollie had raised that when we posted the second time for this DEI position, is that some people probably reject it outright because it looks like it got to work in Olympia. And that's not necessary, obviously, for this. So yeah, that's a really good point, Ollie, and I'll raise it in general with Anita, our interim HR director. Thank you.
And the second one is, are we planning on, or do you think we should send a survey out to our licensee to hear from them whether they've had a break in service from the LCB in the virtual world, and how what it's been like for them contacting us? We said we didn't notice it with employees, but have we checked with our licensees?
I think
Yeah,
that's a great.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, David.
I just want to agree. I think that's a great point. Hadn't thought about it. We should definitely find a way to get that input and see.
Yeah, and I know that, you've got, because we have such a large customer service desk in licensing that gets all these questions and stuff. So I know that staff is on the line, our directors. So we'll talk about that at management team next Tuesday. But I think it's a really good point, Ollie, is how do we know we're not breaking that service with our licensees? And are there issues that we're seeing there? It appears they're getting through, because I think the number one thing that happens right now with all these new festivals, as we open up the community and the state, you look at those special occasion license permits that are coming in, and that tells you everybody's getting back to where they were before. Because I think I heard Becky say we're almost at the same level as we had pre-pandemic, and that was a lot. If I remember right, there were 6,000 events statewide a year. And so I'm getting a sense that people are able to get through, but I'll directly ask the staff about that next week, Ollie, because it's a good question.
Okay. Member Hauge.
When is it you're going to be briefing the legislature on our ability to respond, as you said, to Delta 8 and Delta 10?
Well, it's just a briefing with them about where we are, Russ, which is the advisory that was created and the work that the staff is doing. I think it's next Wednesday, Russ.
Are you going to be discussing Delta 9 as it's manufactured from CBD from outside the 502 system?
I think it'll all be discussed. What we're seeing there, what we're seeing with respect to what created the advisory with respect to Delta 8, 10. So yeah, I think we'll be sharing as much as we know with respect to the issues that we've seen around that. Yeah.
And what are we going to be telling them about our ability or intention to respond to Delta 9 being introduced into our system after it's being manufactured from CBD from outside the system?
Well, if we have an active investigation occurring, which we do today,
I'm not concerned about investigations. I'm concerned about the policy. Are we engaging in a policy of accommodation, of letting this material into the system? Or are we engaging in a policy of interdiction, of trying to get it out of the system? Or are we doing something in the middle?
I think, Rick, we need to be cautious even in that question, Member Hauge, about whether or not we're doing one or the other at this point. And I have confidence that whoever is doing that briefing won't say anything more to legislators than they're able to say to us.
That's right.
Because if this is in the stage of a decision-making and investigation that it can't be shared with us, it should not be shared with members of the public or legislators.
Well, I think that's it. I think it's more not compromising the work that we're already doing by sharing that with anyone outside of those that are conducting the investigation. So,
well, I really don't understand. I mean, when you approach investigations, there is a foundation and that is if there's a responsible agency for the regulation that we're trying to enforce, what is the policy that we're trying to follow here? In our meetings and in our discussions, I have heard a range from, well, this is just a natural progression and it's they turned it into cannabis, so we can't do anything. Is there some other position that we're taking? And I don't know that it's, I'm not amused by it myself. I'm really concerned that we are not making any progress on this. I don't understand it.
We are making
So,
progress. And again, I want to
I-
protect board members from hearing something that they shouldn't hear. We are making progress. I've reported that to you numerous times. There is an investigation going on. There is legal review going on. We have our chemists looking at this. We have all the tools that this agency has to call upon looking at this question. It is a priority for this agency right now. And when the staff has a clear position on what they think that policy should be, they will share it not just with you, but with everybody, including our licensees, if there's something that needs to be that they need to be informed of, and they'll do it in as timely a manner as possible. But it's not our place to have them to short circuit that process and have them tell us today what they will decide after looking at all things. They are working hard on it, and I've got confidence that we're going to see something soon on that.
Well, my question is, since I'm a board member, do I have a role in developing this policy, or am I just a consumer of what the staff puts together?
So let me ask a question because, and to see if I could bring some clarity to this. So what I think I'm hearing is there's things in process and there's things that are happening where there's an open case and whatever we're discussing, it all goes together as one, because whatever we come up with could lead to whatever needs to take place. And that right now, that it's not that nothing is being done, it's not that no decisions are being made, but while there's something active that could eventually come before the board, there's certain things that can't be or shouldn't be discussed with us at this time. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's absolutely right. The Administrative Procedures Act makes that very clear. It's the same principle that is at play when we tell members of the public that they can't address any open case before the board when they come during public comment. And I think that this is complicated, Member Hauge, by the fact that this is not just a policy discussion. We know there is an investigation underway. So there are certain things that should not be talked about publicly as that investigation is underway. But when, of course, the board always has a role to play in policy. Yeah. It does not mean that the board always, and you've got many more years on the board than I do, but my understanding is the board is not in the position of making a policy call prior to an enforcement action. If there needs to be policy development, there will be, and we have that right and responsibility to do so. But I don't want to do it if it's going to mean jeopardizing an ongoing investigation. We should let that play its course.
Okay, for the record, I am not at all interested in any ongoing investigation. I do not know who the subject of the investigation is, how many people are the subject of the investigation, or what they may be being investigated before. My concern is in approaching this issue, are we taking a position where we are looking to accommodate, or are we looking to interdict, or somewhere in between? And I'm apparently not going to get the answer, so I'm not going to ask the question again. Thank you.
Well, I'll just ask the question of you then, which is, do you not see that answering that question today could in fact impact an ongoing investigation?
Well, in my previous life, I worked with a lot of pending investigations. And yes, we were working with the statutes of the state of Washington primarily. But the issue that I'm asking about, and the issue I asked in my previous role when I was supervising a lot of investigations, is not so much what we're uncovering about a particular wrongdoer or a person we've identified as a person of interest, but how are we approaching it? Are we attempting to enforce some statutes? Are we looking at the rules? Are we looking at it as if our hands are tied? Are we looking at it as if we need legislative assistance? Are we looking at it as if we need more rulemaking? Or is there something we can do now to address the issue before us, which is, as was said in the meeting yesterday, 8 to 10% of the current needs for Delta 9 oil are being met with cannabis derived from CBD from hemp.
That question has been answered multiple times. This agency is not waiting for legislative action. This agency is not waiting for rulemaking. We have various avenues available to us. Every one of them is being reviewed and looked at in our ability to address the issue before us. Now, if we were to say, well, here's what we're doing, we think we should, as you say, have a hands-off approach, then I guess that might tip our hand to somebody. If we say we think it's a clear violation and we're going to act, well, that might impact that investigation as well. But if your question really is, what are we doing? What is the timeline? That's been answered. We do not need to wait for rulemaking. We have other ability to. I think that should be made abundantly clear when we say we have an open investigation. If we did not have any tool in front of us and we had to wait for legislative action, we could not conduct an investigation. So we're conducting an investigation, and when staff feels it's at the right position, they will let us know, and we will protect our ability to act on this and not be conflicted out of sitting as the final judges if or when a case comes to us for final adjudication.
That's why, Russ, I'm reluctant to say anything to your question. It's not that I'm trying to be flippant. I'm just saying we can't discuss the particulars. All I can say is that we continue to progress through this process, and the legal analysis that was provided is very helpful. And so, as I said, we'll continue to work through the investigation.
Okay. Did you have anything more, Rick, in your report?
No. Thank you.
We will move on then to our next. We're to the point for additional team updates. I do know that Enforcement Director Chandra Brady has an update for us with a slide presentation. So, Director Brady, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, board members and board chair. I I'm going to share with you some slides similar to the ones we reviewed last month. Those seem to be well received, so we will review that again. We're going to talk about our education and licensee support work, our enforcement work, AVNs, alternative dispute resolutions, our compliance checks, which you guys will get to see. They hot off the press just today. This will be the first time we've discussed or reviewed these stats. Premise checks. We'll talk a little bit about how our officers are spending their time. And then I'd also like to give you a sneak peek. Oh, there was a fly on my camera. A sneak peek into some of the leadership work we've been doing in the Enforcement and Education Division. Start out with our licensee support and education. Data, you can see that we had over 2,000 educational contacts, 2,260 educational contacts in the month of June, with 4,138 hours of education out there with our licensees, and 3,251 individuals. I have shown you on the slide how that's divided in between each of the industries. So you can see some of that data there for yourself. Next slide. I'm sharing with you here some of the top 10 topics that we end up out there chatting with folks about. Regulatory, or just those that really are about rule compliance. And a lot of times our licensees have questions about how are we allowed to do this? Is there a way that we can accomplish this particular goal? And our officers are really great about helping them through that. As you can see down here, we end up working a lot, as Becky mentioned earlier, we end up working a lot with some of the other divisions. For instance, they'll have questions that will delve into areas that licensing would be more appropriate to answer, or that we need some help from communication to make sure folks are informed. So we get those topics covered as well with the help of our partners. And then just to give you a little idea of the total number of contacts and the number of hours conducted, how that compares to what we've been doing over the last year and a half. Just really simply, the blue line will show you the number of hours officers have been out there, and the purple line is the numbers of events. It's impressive to me how much education we continued to provide throughout COVID, and that you do see some dip there during the most intense months for our state, but it continues to increase, and we never saw that number drop substantially. And then we get into the category of complaints. In June, we had 147 total complaints. We're celebrating that 34% of our complaints only were related to COVID-19. This is the first month that we've had less than 100 COVID-19 complaints. And so we've met we met the goal of having 95% of our complaints closed out within 60 days. I've gone ahead and broken down that we had 14 complaints within the cannabis industry, 36 within tobacco, and 93 for liquor. And I'll follow up here with some slides that break those down even further. Just to give you some idea of the COVID-19 complaints in purple or periwinkle, however you like to name your colors, total complaints received in gray. And then the green line shows us the percentage of complaints that are related to COVID. So you can really see the impact on the Enforcement and Education Division when it comes to COVID complaints and what is driving our work. And here specifically, we're going to talk about liquor complaints. You can see that in June of 2021, we had 93 of those complaints, like I said, were in the liquor industry. These do not include the COVID complaints. You can see that if you look back to June of 2020, you can see that we're a little higher right now, but that's because this month we're experiencing things opening back up. And so everybody's just readjusting. The public doesn't always really know what the rule changes are, so they think maybe they need to call in a complaint about something that isn't a violation anymore. So we're just dealing with some of that stuff, and everyone's adjusting, and we're just doing lots of education, both in our communities and with our licensees and with our staff. When it comes to cannabis, you can see that in June we had 14 complaints. Like I said, that is higher than in June of 2020. But that's not inconsistent with what we've seen, although a little bit lower than what we saw at the beginning of the year. Tobacco complaints, we had 36. We've been getting a lot of complaints about youth access in this area. So this is one of the reasons why we really reevaluated what we'd been doing as it relates to compliance checks. One of the reasons we had paused compliance checks is because we wanted to make sure everyone was working in the most safe environment possible. And because with compliance checks, we work closely with youth partners and employ some youths to get out there and help us see how folks are doing in the area of compliance with youth access. We were able to find some ways to make sure that we were being safe and still get back in the business of compliance checks, and you'll see the results of that here soon. AVNs. So you'll see when we talk about compliance checks, this number jumped in June, and that is directly related to compliance checks. The area of youth access is one that is related directly to public safety, and one that we recognize that is going to take some adjusting as we re-enter back into COVID. You'll see in some industries that they were able to hold fast and continue in compliance with the same standard through that time. And you'll see that in some industries that wasn't the case, and we're having to address some of those struggles. Over the past 12 months, one of the areas that we saw higher numbers is increased or repeated violations. The goal there for us is 5%, but over the last 12 months in COVID, what we saw was 15% of businesses had a repeat violation. And I just wanted to point out that was mostly a result of folks that had COVID violations being repeat offenders. Like once they had decided they weren't interested in complying with those particular rules and laws, that they would not come into compliance. So there were more repeated violations. Typically partnering with folks on the path to compliance results in lower percentages of repeat violations, but that wasn't always the case during COVID. Can we go back one slide? I'm sorry, Dustin, you are doing a great job of driving. I just wanted to point out, you'll see the AVNs in category down there on the lower. 2 of those were in the cannabis industry, 18 of those were tobacco and vapor, and 32 of those were in liquor. So that gives you a little bit of sneak preview as to what you're going to see when we get to compliance checks. Thanks, Dustin. This is some slides about our alternative dispute resolution process. So you'll see in June, the periwinkle, purple, blue color, and then our average in gray. So we had 12 uncontested, none go straight to formal hearing, 8 informal hearings, and then 4 of them forwarded to formal hearing after having an informal hearing. Next, you'll see in cannabis, oh, sorry, that was in liquor. Next, you'll see in cannabis something similar, although maintaining much closer to the average. 2 uncontested, none straight to formal hearing, 4 informal hearings, and then only 1 of those went forward to a formal hearing after informal. And here we'll start to get a little bit of information about compliance checks. So in the liquor industry, you'll see that in the month of June, we went out and completed 119 compliance checks and had a 76% compliance rate there. So great work on the part of our enforcement and education division, getting out there and getting those compliance checks done. In the liquor industry. Some opportunity here for us to do some education and training and communication with our industry, and our communication team is already on board to do that work. And then in the cannabis industry, we saw something very similar to what we saw before pre-COVID. And so one of the factors there obviously is that many of our industry, while they definitely suffered impacts, were differently impacted than the liquor industry during the COVID pandemic, but we had fewer compliance checks and a higher compliance rate of 96%. And for tobacco and vapor, we saw numbers pretty similar to liquor, and we did 80 checks there and had a 76% compliance rate. And one of the things I want to point out that is that the areas where we get the most complaints and we hear the most about youth access violations is some of those like one-stop kind of gas station, corner store type places. And what happens is once a place gets a reputation for allowing youth access to these products, then it happens continually. So it's a great thing for the youth in our state to start to identify some of those places and help correct places where that is occurring. And then just to give you a little bit of idea that how much we're out in the field making contact with our industries, we in the liquor area visited almost 2,500 locations. And while our goal is to get 100% of the licensees visited within 2 years, as you can see, we're at 86%. So just looking at how often we're visiting places, and I'm sure we would see if we ran the data that there are some places that get more visits than their 1 every 2 years, but not everybody needs a visit apparently. And then our cannabis premise checks, you can see at 2 years, we're almost at that 100% mark. And this month we were 422 locations. Tobacco and vapor, similar to cannabis, 428. This is just an interesting slide I wanted to share with you about how we're spending our time. And this is the first month that it has been, it just consistently looks like this is the way we do business. Because when you look at 12 months in review, it all looks pretty consistent. I will tell you, though, that if we had a few months back into 2020 and 2019, what you would see is that this has flip-flopped. So as we've learned to do more of our work remotely and much of our work from our virtual offices, that it used to be a 60-40 split the other way, where we were spending the predominant amount of our time in the field and less time administratively, but that has switched obviously with COVID. But you can see based on our numbers that hasn't impacted staff's ability to get the job done. So that's great work on their part. And then finally, I just wanted to share with you, we've been doing a lot of leadership work in the Education and Enforcement Division. We've done 6 workshops, 3 with captains and deputy chiefs, and 3 that included our lieutenants. And we are working on a mission statement. We are working on strategic visions and goals, and we will have a strategic plan also for the Enforcement and Education Division. All of those things point directly towards supporting the agency's mission, vision, and strategic plan. And we've identified 5 categories under which our strategic goals will lie: successful board and stakeholder relations, leadership and management services, operations services, administrative services, partner services, including all of our division partners that we're work so well with and get so much support from, and then our education and industry relationships. So this is just a little what's to come. Thank you, Dustin. Along with that, obviously, is a timeline for much of this planning that has to happen. And as you can see, it will be a lot of work, and it will not take place by next month's presentation. But I will continue to share progress with you as we move along. Next steps will be, we'll finalize and share our mission statement. We're going to finalize that timeline. We'll do some long-range strategic planning, and then staff will literally start to make action plans for each of the goals that we identify. So I see that Ollie has a question.
Okay, and I just text Dustin. My question is on slide 12. Going from formal hearing, from informal. So are you saying here out of 4, only 1 resulted in going on to a formal hearing?
Yes, ma'am. So,
and then the other 3, does that mean whatever, it was corrected, or what does that mean with the 3 that didn't go on?
That means that they resolved it without going to formal hearing. So we agreed with the industry on a resolution.
Thank you. That's what I was, okay. Thank you. That was my question. Thanks.
I have a question from one of the first slides. I think it was slide 2, but when you were talking about educational contacts, does that, and maybe it's broken down, I didn't see it, but between law enforcement officers and compliance consultants, do both of them do educational contacts?
Yes, they're both out there doing it. If that's a differentiation you'd be interested in seeing, I can certainly break that down in the future.
No, I was just curious, want to make sure that I just understood that right. So yeah,
Yep.
they all have the ability to do that and do that as part of their normal course of business on whether they're an LEO or a compliance consultant.
It's everybody. I just logged 35 seconds of educational time for answering that question for you. No, just kidding.
Okay, I expect to see that in next month's report. All right. Any other questions for enforcement? Seeing none. Thank you. Appreciate
Thank
that,
you.
And then I don't have any other teams on the agenda for updates. I don't know if Director Garza has anybody he wants to call on or knows of. I'll give you a moment here to see. If not, maybe we have another question, but
I don't think so, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
I think we've got the directors here that wanted to report out, so I think we're good.
Okay, great. Any last board question there? Seeing none. Okay. Thanks to the staff for the presentations today. Much appreciated. And we will see you all soon. This executive management team meeting is adjourned. Thanks.
Thank you, Board Chair.